I recently discovered a small box under the stairs that contained a huge amount of these positive slide film. They're images my dad shot way back in the 60s. He was passionate about cameras and different types of cameras, like the Polaroids and these positive transparencies being a classic example of kind of the cutting edge of photographic technology at the time. So when I discovered them, I realized that they're images that I maybe have never seen, and if I have seen them, I've seen them years and years and years ago. Certainly when you hold these up to the light, you get an idea of what's on them, but you don't really get to see any great detail. You really need a positive slide viewer, and that could be often a small box that you would insert the slide into that was kind of backlit like a light box, or quite often they were projected onto a wall for your friends and family's viewing pleasure. So I kind of discovered them and thought they were very interesting. I love different photographic processes and that, but I didn't have any way in which I could view them, and so they kind of just ended up in an envelope on a shelf. But then through some total element of coincidence and luck, I went to the local market here in Bray. If you're picturing some kind of eclectic place with wonderful food and wonderful smells, then you couldn't be further from the truth. Bray Market is down a grubby little back alley full of feral cats and old beer kegs. So I went in there, and the what's on sale in Bray Market is just crazy. There's old pinball machines, there's kind of wireless routers from the early 1990s, there's old stereo systems, chintzy furniture. It's kind of a bizarre mix of kind of unwanted items essentially. But just as I was leaving, I spotted this negative digitizer, and so it's a little 5 megapixel CMOS sensor, and you can insert film strips into it with a cassette like this, or there's also is in it now a little tray into which you can load slide film. You physically just push each slide in, it scans it and gives you a decent size image. I mean, I didn't want to make an art project out of this. I just want to get a reasonable image that is good enough for me to view and to share with some of the family, So once I got that, really, I kind of made it a bit of a restoration project. I kind of decided that I would clean the slides physically because they desperately needed it. They were so covered in dirt and hairs and grime that they desperately needed to be physically cleaned. So I looked up how best to do that and found that kind of isopropyl alcohol or surgical spirits and a cotton bud was really the way to go about that. And so they have been very gently cleaned. The dirt buildup on some of these is quite bad. So it took quite a few goes to actually clean off the slide. In some cases, I have used a bit of Photoshop because I felt like I didn't want to go any harder at a particular stain on a slide that just wasn't moving. But I've tried to keep Photoshop to an absolute minimum. I've tried to make it a physical restoration project. So actually physically cleaning the slides is what I want to do. I also want to really restore the slide in the sense of, if I felt that the color balance on the original slide was off, I'm going to keep that. I don't want to color correct any of this. I don't, it is about capturing the information that is on that slide rather than kind of trying to improve or embellish any of that. I don't want to do any of that. I really want to kind of capture what is on the original slide. So that said, it's been a really fascinating little project, and I'll kind of go through showing you some of the before and after slides, so you can see kind of how the image is improved and kind of yeah, you can see a little bit more of that process. I have to say that at the end of the whole thing, I kind of had a few realizations. You know, now that we've finished restoring these images, I've had a few kind of thoughts on the whole thing. You know, first of all, I never really regarded my father as being any kind of photographer. I always just thought he kind of enjoyed the gadgets and gimmicks of photography, the kind of stuff like this positive slides, the Polaroids. But, you know, as I look through all of these photographs, it strikes me that you can't really take all of these photographs without having some passion for the medium of photography itself. And so that's something I've really realized, is that he actually really cared. And you can see kind of some of his compositions, I think, are really nice. You know, there is an element of kind of, they really speak of a certain time, and it's hard not to like the shots just because of the era. But I think there's also some lovely compositions in there. And it also makes me think so much about, like, you know, this Kodachrome is such a beautiful film. And the tonal values are just so gorgeous off it. And the fact is that digital is so malleable now that kind of, will we have a look for the eras of digital? Will there kind of, you know, people look back and go, oh, that's very kind of 1990s or 2000s, you know, or will it all be the kind of filters that people use on their cameras? And will they have a similar nostalgia value in 20, 30, 40 years time? It really makes me think about how I process images, to be honest. You know, what kind of tonal values are you looking for? Sometimes we're endlessly trying to kind of get the most out of an image, and really maybe what we should be doing is accepting kind of the tonal values of the equipment that we're working with. Like, you know, this the kind of image that this EOS M makes is the kind of image that this EOS M makes, and maybe you shouldn't always be trying to stretch it in to make it this, to make it that. Maybe you just go, actually, that is the typical Canon color science. That is the real beauty of this medium, is kind of sometimes tied in with the actual process you're linked with. You know, I think about Carlton Watkins when he shot in Yosemite. His process was so limited. He's so kind of he had such a narrow dynamic range, and yet he shot for that narrow dynamic range and made it look beautiful. And so maybe we should kind of, maybe that's something I'm kind of learning from restoring so much positive film, is that sometimes the limitations of the medium are part of the beauty of the medium, if that makes any sense. Yeah, but I certainly would like to think that I will change my editing and my post-processing as a result of looking at so much of these images and how their tonal values sit, and how that can be a beautiful aesthetic without being the widest tonal range ever. You know, it's really informative in that sense. Yeah, that's some thoughts on that. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks a lot for watching. If you want to comment or leave a thumbs up down below, that'd be greatly appreciated. If you've had any stories of your own attempts at restoring old film, I would love to hear about how you went about doing that and the success or otherwise that you had. Anyway, for the time being, thanks a lot. Take care. Goodbye.